Friday the 13th, 1980, remains one of the most iconic and influential horror films of all time. It's a hallmark of the slasher genre, whose legacy endures over 4 decades later. Directed by Sean S. Cunningham and written by Victor Miller, this low-budget horror flick has transcended its humble origins to become a cornerstone of American horror cinema. It is celebrated not just for its shocks and thrills, but also for the cultural phenomenon it sparked, particularly in the decades-long saga of the Friday the 13th franchise. Set at the fictional Camp Crystal Lake, the film's plot is deceptively simple. A group of young counselors are stalked and murdered by an unseen assailant as they attempt to reopen the camp, which has been plagued by tragedy ever since a young boy, Jason Voorhees, drowned there many years earlier. But it's in the film's execution that Friday the 13th excels, playing with the audience's expectations and delivering a relentless sense of dread that crescendos into a shocking, iconic twist. One of the most impressive aspects of Friday the 13th is how effectively it utilizes its setting. The remote wooded campgrounds are perfectly suited to instill feelings of isolation and vulnerability, making the character's plight even more terrifying. The film's cinematography, particularly its use of first-person shots from the killer's perspective, amps up the suspense and immerses viewers directly into the action. These stylistic choices would go on to influence countless future horror films. Though Jason Voorhees has become synonymous with the franchise, it is his mother, Pamela Voorhees, played by Betsy Palmer, who turns out to be the true killer in the original film. The reveal of Pamela as the vengeful mother avenging her son's death is both unexpected and deeply unsettling. Palmer's performance is chilling, as she switches between maternal warmth and psychotic rage, making her one of the most memorable horror villains of the era. The twist was a bold move, subverting the monster trope that audiences expected. In a now legendary turn of events, Betsy Palmer initially only took the role because she needed a new car and didn't expect the film to become a hit. Little did she know her portrayal would cement her as a horror icon. Interestingly, she later expressed disdain for the film, not anticipating the cult status it would achieve. Yet her performance has become a lasting legacy in horror cinema. But Friday the 13th doesn't end with the defeat of Pamela Voorhees. The film's final shock, where a young and decayed Jason leaps out of the water to attack the last surviving counselor, Alice, Adrienne King, remains one of the most famous jump scares in horror history. This scene wasn't initially part of the script. It was added as a last-minute idea by special effects master Tom Savini, inspired by the shocking ending of Carrie, 1976. The ambiguous nature of whether Jason is real or merely a nightmare added an extra layer of intrigue and paved the way for the future films to transform Jason into the relentless killer audiences would come to know. One cannot talk about Friday the 13th without highlighting the groundbreaking work of Tom Savini, the film's special effects maestro. Known for his gore effects in George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead, 1978, Savini brought a level of realism and inventiveness to the kills that set a new standard for slasher films. From Kevin Bacon's famous arrow-through-the-throat death to the decapitation of Pamela Voorhees, the effects are gruesome and shocking even by today's standards. Savini's work made the violence visceral and unnerving, without crossing into gratuitousness, a delicate balance that many subsequent slasher films would struggle to maintain. The film's sound design and Harry Manfredini's eerie score are also pivotal in creating its unsettling atmosphere. The signature "ki ki ki, ma ma ma," which was based on the phrase "killer mommy," has since become one of horror's most recognizable auditory cues. It's a simple but incredibly effective use of sound that manages to build suspense and create tension, even in scenes where nothing visually threatening is happening. Manfredini's minimalist score complements the film's pacing, enhancing moments of stillness as well as those of intense terror. While Friday the 13th was initially dismissed by some critics as derivative of John Carpenter's Halloween, 1978, it quickly gained traction with audiences, grossing nearly $60 million worldwide on a budget of just $550,000. The film tapped into a growing appetite for slasher movies that offered thrills, chills, and a bit of moral punishment for teenagers who engaged in sinful behavior. The notion of the final girl, a pure, virtuous character surviving the horrors, was crystallized in Alice, played by Adrienne King, who embodies both vulnerability and resilience. Beyond its box office success, Friday the 13th laid the groundwork for an entire subgenre. It spawned numerous sequels, each more outlandish than the last, as well as comics, video games, and even a reboot in 2009. The image of Jason Voorhees in his hockey mask, though he doesn't don it until the third film, has become synonymous with horror, making him one of cinema's most enduring villains. Additionally, the film has been dissected for its influence on the rules of the slasher genre. Characters who engage in premarital sex, drink, or do drugs often meet grisly fates, while the more virtuous characters stand a better chance of surviving. These tropes became staples in horror, influencing films like A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984, and Scream, 1996. Friday the 13th is far more than just a slasher flick. It's a cultural touchstone that has influenced horror for decades. While its plot may be straightforward, the film's technical craftsmanship, from its inventive kills to its haunting score, elevates it above many of its contemporaries. The film also introduced audiences to one of horror's most enduring mythologies, with the tragic figure of Jason Voorhees evolving into an unstoppable force of terror over the subsequent films. Though some might view Friday the 13th through the lens of nostalgia, it remains a genuinely effective horror film. The tension, atmosphere, and scares still resonate, and the film's impact on the genre cannot be overstated. For horror fans, it's a must-watch, not only for its place in history, but for the sheer craft of its suspense and terror. The legacy of Camp Crystal Lake lives on, and this original film is where it all began.